Cultural identity. Who are we? Who are you? Who am I? Identity goes beyond just culture. But today, in this limited time, 5 to 7 minutes, I would like to highlight the subject of cultural identity. Before we dive into the topic, can anybody give me a quick shout out? What do you think culture is? What do you think identity is? Similar to what I show on the slides. Do you believe these are the identity values that define us? Who are we? By race, by gender, language, cultural, belief, and history. Keep in mind, culture is just one component of our identity. Since I'm giving a speech on research, I did some research, and with the assistance of Toastmaster Bob, I'm able to find a resource on who defined identity. Come from the author Rothman in 1997. Identity involves the interpretive dynamic of culture, history, values, and beliefs. Now, do they encompass everything? Probably not. But the second paragraph is what I want to highlight today. It's a dynamic that is fundamentally psychologically and social, growing from our sense of who we are, who constitutes to our community, and what this implies concerning our relationship to people, both within our community and outside. Imagine like Toastmaster, it's a community that we're involved in. And Toastmaster Sandra just talked about her journey in Toastmaster, while she was enamored because of the community support, leadership, communication for second to it. And identity is somebody that we can relate to. It's something that we can engage our audience, engage our community. Now, a lot of us might be confused now. There's a lot of words here. What does it mean about relationship to people, relationship to a community? It can get really complicated, right? So let's start with something that's more visual. And I prepared several images that may interest you, especially right now during this time of the day at 12:30 p.m. What should we be doing right now? We should be eating lunch, right? So let's start with something simple. What can I identify a culture or a group with? Food. This was me 5 years ago in the city of Shanghai in China, enjoying my favorite cuisine, the dragon bun. And also other cuisine as well that you saw on the right that I was enjoying. Yes, that was pre-COVID-19 when the time was good. But food identifies who we are, where we come from, what we enjoy. Why is that? Looking back in history, human civilization started out as a hunter and gathering society. We transitioned from hunter and gathering to agriculture society. We started to grow food. We start to grow crops, have cattle, having animals. And that become our raw material of food sources. This map shows you where the major grain are located throughout the world, whether it is in the American continent, African, European, Asian, and Australian. We all have different diets. This is what I like to call the evolution of diet. This diet eventually forms into local cuisine. The delicacy that you can see on this picture come from all over the world. Whether it's seafood, meat, rice, porridge, spaghetti, it comes from what? It comes from the grain that I mentioned earlier. That's an evolution of identity. And food defined who we are because we are who we eat. Those food eventually become commonality. They group into individual, into community, right? Into tribes, into community, then into kingdoms, empires, eventually nations. Evolves from food, which is a symbol of identity. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, I'll just walk you through using food as an example how to define identity, something that we all related. Why? Because we all have to eat. I don't care whether you're a Toastmaster or not. You have to eat. I know some of you can cook as well. But food evolved from us as human beings, our ancestors, who grew up agricultural, different grains, to different diets, to different food groups, and now to different nationalities. To jump into cultural identity, here's the definition. What cultural identity means. It's an identity or feeling of belonging to a group. Part of a person's self-conception and self-perception related to what? Remember what I just talked about? Nationality, ethnicity, religion, all these different groups that has its own class, a distinct culture. That is what cultural identity means. Now, why is it important to you, particularly to the audience here today? I had a chance to speak with the Cultural Intelligence Group this past week. David Livermore is the CEO and president, founder of this organization, being around for 30 years. And they define cultural intelligence, what CQ means, and what's a better understanding of cultural quotient can help us. Cultural identity fall underneath that. Just so happened, David Livermore is also featured in our July Toastmasters International magazine. If you want to take a look, go to the website that I have linked at the top. And there's a great quote. You need to understand the cultural code before you give and you receive evaluation. When I say evaluation, not speech evaluation, the person you're interacting with. You got to understand that. If you want to know more about it, there are 3 webinars coming up offered by TI on July 29th through 31st that you can attend free. The webinar live on Zoom. In conjunction, I'm also working on a diversity club that I have announced last Friday. We have our very own kicked-off meeting this past weekend with 37 participants. Give you a screenshot how many people we had already. This is a very important subject that we're trying to advocate. Particular, we want to talk about not just the people in the face you see on the screen, but the waterline of visibility. Fellow Toastmasters guests, can you see where culture is in this iceberg? Where is it at? Right under the waterline. It's just a one component that I mentioned today in this topic of cultural identity. Last, I want to leave you with a question. Who are we? This is a journey we need to explore together. This is something that to be explored. And I want to quote what Toastmaster Sandra Olin just said. In leadership, whether it's a culture, whether it's identity, or whether we work with people, we have to have empathy. And that's the point that Sandra made in her speech. We got to relate to other identity. And for us to understand better, I invite you to join this journey with me, whether through the club, whether through TI, or outside Toastmaster, to find out who are we and how we can better work together in a group. Mr. Toastmaster.